braved the ice and came out this morning. I'm real proud of you. I didn't think anybody would be here this morning except me. And I was kind of unexpected, the ice this morning. The sermon that I have this morning is a little bit different. And the reason why it's a little different is because I heard a story of something that happened this week with some friends of mine. And the story reminded me about a Bible story. And so we're going to be in Genesis chapter 37, but we're not going to read because we're going to talk about the life of Joseph. And the life of Joseph, the story of Joseph that I want to talk about takes place from chapter 37 all the way to chapter 41. And so I'm not going to we're not going to read all of that. So I want you, for your homework, to go home and read Genesis chapter 37 through 41, especially if you're going through something in your life, difficult time, a time where you feel like, that just things are bad, things seem like they're not fair, and there's just certain things that hard times that we go through our life. And when we enter into those hard times, we have the story here of Joseph to look at. And I'm just going to talk about Joseph's life here and some things that he goes through. And we're just going to try to learn from Joseph and what takes place in his life here. And it starts out here in verse 37. We find the story of Joseph. And it starts out with Joseph being the favorite child. He's the favorite son. And Joseph's dad, Jacob, he makes Joseph a coat of many colors, a special coat. And because Joseph is Jacob's favorite son, this causes jealousy with the brothers. And the brothers, they hate Joseph. And in fact, they hate Joseph so much that they conspire to kill Joseph. Now, this is not Joseph's fault. Joseph didn't do anything to be the favorite brother. And really, it's a bad situation because really, as a parent, you really shouldn't have favorites. And Jacob kind of messes up here, and this is what happens. The brothers, they all hate Joseph. And so what happens is the brothers, one day, they've had enough. Especially because Joseph has this dream, and he tells the brothers, hey, I've had two dreams, and guess what happens in the two dreams? Well, basically, you're all going to bow down to me. Well, that didn't go over real well, as you can imagine. The brothers were like, who does he think he is? Telling us that we're going to bow to him. So that doesn't help Joseph's case. But hey, Joseph didn't, he didn't make this up. It's just the dream. It wasn't his fault. He had the dream. He just had the dream. Now maybe he shouldn't have told it. Okay, but really, Joseph doesn't really do a whole lot here to warrant what happens. And that is that as he's walking into the field one day, the brothers are there and they start talking amongst themselves. They're going to kill him. But instead of killing him, one of the brothers says, you know what, let's just throw him down this well. And so they rip off the coat of many colors and they throw him down the well. Well, in the meantime, some of the brothers, they get to thinking amongst themselves, if I can get Joseph out of there, and if I take Joseph back to Dad, then maybe Dad will really think a lot of me. And so they end up taking Joseph out of the well, but there is some people that come by, some slave traders, some Midianites. And so what they end up doing is they end up selling Joseph as a slave. So Joseph now is a slave. And we find in chapter 39 here, Joseph, he is a slave and he is working as a slave. Now, it's important as we look at the lives of Joseph that in every situation, Joseph, he remains positive. He works hard at whatever situation he is in, and he always looks to the Lord for guidance. And we've been in some difficult situations, and he's going to be in some more difficult situations. Because, see, as he's a slave in Potiphar's house here, he gets promoted because he's doing the right thing. You know, he's working hard. He's an honest person, and so the slave owner, he puts him in charge of all the other slaves. Promoted. Until, well, there's an incident with the slave owner's wife. And she falsely accuses Joseph of doing something that he wasn't doing. This is a situation, and I'm telling you, you want to read this part. But the slave owner's wife falsely accuses Joseph, and Joseph gets thrown in prison. Now he's in prison. What do you think Joseph does here? He has a positive attitude. He continues to stay faithful to the Lord, and he becomes the best prisoner he can be. And once again, Joseph is promoted, and he is put in charge of all the other prisoners. Now, we go to chapter 40, and in chapter 40, we find Joseph in prison, and while Joseph is in prison, there are two other prisoners that catch Joseph's eye, because they are some of Pharaoh's staff. There is the butler and the baker. Apparently the butler and the baker, they have done something to Pharaoh, aggravated him, and he's thrown the butler and the baker in prison with Joseph. Now, Joseph is kind of, being a man of God, one of his gifts is that he can interpret dreams. And so the butler and the baker, they have a dream while they are locked in prison with Joseph. And they're kind of upset. And they're talking about this dreams that they had. And they mention to Joseph that they had a dream. Now Joseph, he lets them know, hey, well, God can interpret this dream, and God uses me to interpret dreams. And so let me interpret your dreams for you. So he interprets the butler's and the baker's dream. And the butler's interpretation of his dream is one that is really good. It is that he is going to be restored back to his position as Pharaoh's servant. And so Joseph asks the butler, he says, when you go back and you're restored to your position, will you please remember me? Because I'm locked away in this prison, and I've really not done anything to be where I'm at. I was falsely imprisoned. And if you could find favor with Pharaoh, if you could just remember me, would you do that, please? Unfortunately, the baker, he also has a dream, and the baker's dream doesn't turn out so well, because in the baker's dream, the baker's going to lose his head, and he does. So it doesn't work out real well for the baker, but Joseph still does the right thing and still tells him the truth and tells him the situation. So Joseph is in prison, and he's all hopeful because the baker is going to the Pharaoh's house, and he's gonna put in a good word for him, and he just knows he's gonna get out. But the butler forgets about it. So Joseph is stuck there 2 more years. In chapter 41, we see that Joseph is still in prison for something that he didn't do. Not only something that he didn't do, he's in prison because he did the right thing. And so all of a sudden, Pharaoh has a dream now. In chapter 41. And Pharaoh has a dream, and he's so upset. And he says he's wishing he knew somebody that could give an interpretation of this dream that he had. I know a guy. I know a guy that knows how to interpret dreams. Conveniently now. And so he goes against Joseph. He brings him out of prison. He brings him to Pharaoh. And Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream. And the interpretation of the dream is vitally important for Egypt because it's telling them of an impending famine. And so Joseph is able to tell Pharaoh that he needs to store up these food supplies because of an impending famine. And so Pharaoh does exactly what Joseph tells him to do. And when the famine hits, Egypt is the only country that has a stockpile of food, and because of that, they become great. Now, you see, Pharaoh is so happy with Joseph that he promotes Joseph to a position second only to Pharaoh in the largest country at the time and the most powerful country. And why? Because Joseph continually does the best that he can in every situation that he's in. Now, I had some friends of mine, and they're a group of guys, and I know some of them. I don't know all of them, but I know some of them. And they have this picture company. It's Iconic Studio. They're a member there of the studio, and so these group of guys, they go down to Florida to this photography seminar thing that's down there. Anyhow, while they're on the way back, they're coming through Atlanta. And while they're coming through Atlanta gets an ice storm. And my brother lives in Atlanta, and he says it's just complete chaos down there. So they're not really prepared to deal with ice like we are. And so these guys are traveling through Atlanta during this ice storm, and I guess from what, and I was, I just kind of, when I heard about it, I thought, oh well, they got a little ice, that's no big deal, because we kind of deal with that stuff up there. But down there, it's chaos. And I guess people were just abandoning their cars on the interstate. And it was just, it was like, somebody had dropped a nuclear bomb and people were just, abandoning their cars. So these group of men here are trying to just drive through Atlanta, and they're in this awful situation where there's just cars sliding off the road everywhere, and cars parked in the middle of the road. And so they work their way off the interstate and they slide into this little Kroger store. Now they can't get to a hotel. All the hotels are booked. And basically they are stuck now at this Kroger store for the night. And as luck would have it, the employees of the Kroger store were stuck there as well. So the employees, they start feeding the people who are there and providing a place for them to stay there at the store. Now, here's this group of men, and they are thinking, we are stuck in Atlanta in this ice storm, and if it was me, I would probably be thinking, why am I here? I don't have a place to sleep. I can't get through this city. There's a group of country boys, and they're stuck in the middle of this town. I can't imagine what, Atlanta's a big city. I can't imagine what it would be like. But they start to think. They pull Joseph here, and they start to think, how can we make the most out of this situation? So what they do is they think, well, we've got this, we've got all of our stuff here in the truck.
So we're gonna bring all of our stuff into the Kroger store. We're gonna start taking pictures of all of the employees, and because that's what we do. You know, this is our thing. So they go in, they bring all their stuff into the Kroger store, and they start taking pictures of the employees. And then, you know, we're gonna do like a nice thing so that they can remember, you know, what happened. It's kind of a neat situation. So they start taking pictures of the employees there, and it's just it turns into just a really good, really a blessing for them, because they get to meet some neat people, some people that you know that maybe, you know, haven't had their picture taken in who knows how long. And word gets out what happens here. And the next thing you know, these men, well, they're on TV, and they're interviewing them, and they're finding out about their story, and I can't imagine how much free advertising that they have gotten out of this situation, all because they maintained a positive attitude in their difficult situation. They did the best that they could do in their situation. Now, that's exactly what Joseph does here. You see, we all go through bad things in our lives. I've gone through tough things in my life. And, you know, when you're in that tough situation, having a good attitude is so difficult. But if you keep in mind that God could be guiding you, just like God guides Joseph here. He was sought to kill. He was thrown down a well. He was put in prison. He was falsely accused. He had an awful life. But he always strove to do the very best. He always was faithful to God. He always worked as hard as he could. And through those things, God was leading him to a place of authority where he was second in charge in a huge country. God could be guiding you through your difficult situation to something great. And that is what you have to remember when you're going through something difficult. The trick is make the most out of every situation. When you go through something, when something happens, look around and say, what can I do? How can I make the most out of this situation? Don't have a pity party. This is what we want to do. We want to sit down and we want to say, oh, why me? Why does this always happen to me? We have to stay positive. See, if we get ourselves down, oftentimes we miss the blessing. We have to keep your head up, and you have to keep striving to do your best in whatever situation you're in. I don't care what situation it is. Because oftentimes something good, if you will stay positive, if you will do your best, and if you will keep striving and looking forward, something great may be right around the corner. So this morning, as we would have a song of invitation, I want to just encourage you, if there's something going on in your life, and you know, we all go through things. We all go through difficult times. We had a buyout at work, and you know, there for several months, we all didn't know we were going to have a job. And you know, it would have been real easy to just say, "Oh, what are we going to do?" But through it all, it looks like that it's going to turn out to be a really good thing for all of us. We've got a new boss. They've come in and they've talked to us, and they seem like a really great group of guys. Stay positive in every situation, because good things could be right around the corner, as we sing this morning.